Ever wonder what Spider-Man games never made it out of production for gamers to enjoy? Find out in every cancelled Spider-Man game, Game Facts Special. There are cancelled Spider-Man games for multiple Xbox consoles, Wii, PS2, PC, and more. We'll be taking a look at all of them in this episode. First up, while Sam Raimi was working on the embattled sequel film to Spider-Man 3, a video game adaptation of what was planned to be Spider-Man 4 was also in production at Radical Entertainment. This video game would have been structured much like the previous two Spider-Man film adaptations, featuring an open-world map of New York City with various side missions and collectibles. When the Spider-Man 4 film was shut down, work on the video game accompaniment was also cancelled. Thankfully, some of the work Radical did on Spider-Man 4 was recycled for Prototype 2 and didn't go to waste. Screenshots of the cancelled project have been circulating since 2019, and gameplay video also surfaced at the end of November 2019. An incomplete version of both the Wii and Xbox 360 versions of the game has been leaked by different sources. In 1996, Byron Preiss Multimedia and Brooklyn Multimedia released Spider-Man: The Sinister Six on PC. This Spider-Man adventure was structured like a Telltale game, in that it was a choose-your-own-adventure title with branching paths based on decisions and actions made throughout the game. A year later, in 1997, a sequel to that game was in the works, titled Spider-Man: The Venom Factor. Despite being included on developer Sapphire's website on its list of completed games, Spider-Man: The Venom Factor was never released. On the archived version of that very same website, you can find an image and a short cinematic from the unreleased game, which you can see now. Spider-Man: Web of Shadows was a 2008 action-adventure game developed by Shaba Games and published by Activision, who held the publishing rights to the webhead for many years. Web of Shadows received only middling reviews from both critics and gamers, but it did have a few universally praised features. Among them was its implementation of aerial and wall-crawling combat. Shaba Games got to work on a sequel to Web of Shadows shortly after release, planning to expand on those few mechanics, as well as introduce Wolverine as a playable character after his appearance in the previous game. Shaba Games unfortunately shut down in the middle of 2009, while the sequel, tentatively called Spider-Man Classic, was in pre-production. The only information available for Spider-Man Classic, outside of some concept renders and the fact that Wolverine was planned to be playable, was the game's format. Instead of an open-world game, Spider-Man Classic would have instead been a level-based game, in which each level was designed to lead up to an iconic villain, which would effectively put a more significant emphasis on the combat mechanics Web of Shadows was praised for. There are even more cancelled Spider-Man games next, but Spider-Man isn't alone in all these games. Everyone from Spider-Ham to Doctor Doom appear in the games ahead. First, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because we plan to keep growing and providing you with all kinds of game fact videos. Spider-Man: Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time were going to receive the remastered treatment. This is according to an anonymous Reddit user who claims to work at Activision. Apparently, sometime after Activision lost the Spider-Man game rights in 2014, they attempted to work out a deal with Disney to regain the rights. Had this deal gone through, we could have seen remasters of Shattered Dimension, Edge of Time, Ultimate Spider-Man, and more. Instead, every indication is that Marvel traded Sony the Spider-Man game rights in exchange for Spider-Man staying in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But we have no official confirmation of this. The video game tie-in to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 landed in 2007 for a smattering of consoles, including PC, GBA, Xbox 360, PS2, PS3, PSP, Wii, and DS. If the development of the game had gone according to the original plan, there would have been two other consoles appearing on that list. Both original Xbox and Nintendo GameCube versions of Spider-Man 3 were planned, but each one was scrapped for different reasons. The GameCube version was shut down due to the limited availability of resources on Activision's behalf, as they were also developing Shrek the Third for the console. The original Xbox port was cancelled because of the system's low sales numbers around that time. This next game is unlike other games on this list, because it enjoyed a brief period of success before being shut down. The mobile gaming-focused developer Gameloft announced an endless runner titled Spider-Man Unlimited in June 2014. It was released a few months later in September 2014 and featured all manners of characters from throughout the Spider-Man universe, including Spider-Ham and Spider-Man 2099. New characters were also added in updates periodically. Also included in the more than 30 updates it received were new story chapters to extend players' enjoyment of the game, new enemies and stages, and event quests. Spider-Man Unlimited even had tie-in content for Avengers Infinity War developed for it. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough to keep the game going, because by the end of March 2019, Gameloft had shut the game down due to declining engagement. But with over 30 million downloads, it was far from a failure. Marvel vs. Capcom kind of ruined the concept of Marvel fighting games. It's going to be incredibly difficult to make a game that tops that series, as was evidenced by Marvel Nemesis: Rise of the Imperfects. There was another attempt made at a Marvel fighter, but it just didn't get a chance to get off the ground. In 2007, EA Chicago was working on a game called Mavel Chaos, which was to be a third-person brawler starring a roster of iconic Marvel characters. Only 9 months into development, EA shut the project down after reports that the game was suffering from severe quality issues. EA's Chicago studio was also shut down shortly after, most likely due to the failure of Mavel Chaos. Unseen64 has plenty of screenshots of the unfinished game, which definitely seem rough. They do, however, show some gameplay of a classic comic-suited Spider-Man posed on top of a car and in mid-assault of Dr. Doom. There is also some rough footage of a gameplay prototype that gives a better idea of how the game would play. In 2000, Activision released a wildly popular and successful Spider-Man game on the original PlayStation, Nintendo 64, and the Sega Dreamcast a year later. It was actually one of the first games developed by Neversoft, who had just released the first Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game the prior year. When the time came for a sequel to capitalize on the success of the first game, the approach to development was a little less focused. Spider-Man had 3 separate sequels developed uniquely for 3 separate consoles. Spider-Man 2: Enter Electro was developed for PlayStation 1 and was the closest to the first game mechanically. So why didn't the N64 or Dreamcast get a sequel to a game that had appeared on those consoles? In the case of the N64, it's difficult to tell, as the system was fairly popular. But for the Dreamcast, its exclusion could likely be traced to a success of the console, or lack thereof. The system was discontinued in March 2001 after many months of stagnant sales. This development was probably early enough in the development of Spider-Man 2: Enter Electro that any work that had begun on a Dreamcast version could be scrapped. In 1992, Marvel started several lines of comics that made up the Marvel 2099 universe. These comics followed far future versions of favorite heroes, including the Punisher, Ghost Rider, and, yes, Spider-Man. Several years into these comics' run, Mindscape Inc. announced that they would be making a video game based on the 2099 universe, which would be based on the One Nation Under Doom storyline from the comics, and feature 2D side-scrolling gameplay with 3D character models. That announcement was made in February of 1996, with an intended release date of December 1st of the same year. By May, video demos on CD-ROM and VHS were being shipped to the gaming press for evaluation, and then a single playable level was shown in July. EGM featured a preview of the game in August that showed screenshots of the E3 gameplay, but it also included the reveal that Spider-Man 2099 would be appearing in the game as a playable character. However, as 1996 came to a close, Mindscape Inc. suffered financial issues that led to significant layoffs. This decrease in workforce caused the development of Marvel 2099: One Nation Under Doom to be abandoned, though it was never formally cancelled. Shortly after the release of the well-regarded Ultimate Spider-Man game in 2005, developer Treyarch began designing game assets and concept art for a potential sequel. They even managed to get Brian Michael Bendis, the writer of the first game and a prolific comic book writer, signed on to write the sequel's story. According to Chris Salazar, the lead texture artist for the game, Ultimate Spider-Man 2's story would have taken place in the winter and featured Green Goblin as the villain, and perhaps a playable character. Due to the winter setting, the map would have been covered in snow, and Chris even made snow-covered trees and tile sets for snowy streets. Unfortunately, development didn't progress much past that point. Activision didn't believe an Ultimate Spider-Man sequel would sell as well as the Spider-Man 2 film tie-in did, so they canceled the project before it had a chance to get off the ground. Thanks to Mike Alexander for writing this episode. Make sure to like the video and subscribe for a ton more canceled games. Check out our recent episodes on Mario and Zelda finds from Giga League. This is McGen signing off. Thanks for watching. This has been a GameFAQs special.